compound under local anesthetic, that is cocaine. Now this particular compound is a naturally obtained alkaloid. So it's a natural alkaloid, so it is obtained from a natural source, from a plant source. So it's obtained from the leaves of Erythroxylon coca, which is mainly found in South America. Okay, so it's a naturally obtained substance. It is not a synthetic one. If you can consider its property as an anesthetic, it's a very good surface anesthetic. Under the classification, we have seen that there are injectable type and there are surface anesthetic. So this is a very good surface anesthetic. Okay, and it is also rapidly absorbed from the buccal mucous membrane. It's not absorbed from the intact skin, but it is absorbed from the buccal mucous membrane specifically. And this compound was introduced in 1984 basically as an ocular anesthetic. Ocular meaning it was used to anesthetize the eye specifically. For local application to the eye, it used to anesthetize the eye. For specific procedures to be carried out in the eye, maybe it is a diagnostic one or maybe minor surgeries to be carried out. Okay, but it was introduced as a ocular anesthesia. It is not supposed to be injected. Okay, now why it is not supposed to be injected, or why it is not an injectable type of anesthetic is because it is a protoplasmic poison. Okay, meaning it results in the cellular damage. Okay, so it results in tissue necrosis. So that's why if it is not supposed to be injected, because if it is injected, okay, locally also it might get absorbed into the systemic circulation and it would start damaging the body cells. So that's how it is not preferably injected, but only it is applied topically. Okay, specifically it is used for ocular application. Okay, now if you can see the systemic actions of cocaine, we had also seen this under the systemic actions when we had covered under the general description of the local anesthetics. Okay, so this cocaine, it is a very good CNS stimulant drug, or it has prominent CNS stimulatory properties. Specifically, it alters the mood and behavior of the person. That is, it produces a sense of well-being. That is, a person can gain euphoria from this particular drug. Okay, so because of the sense of well-being, that a person will have a very nice feeling after this drug is entering into your systemic circulation, it can reach the CNS and it will produce euphoriatic action. So because of the sense of well-being or euphoria which is obtained from this drug has an abuse liability. It has a very high abuse liability. That is, the person may want to take this drug again and again because of its CNS effects, because of the alterations in the mood. It has abuse liability, very high abuse liability. It is used as the drug by the persons who inappropriately consume the drugs just to gain the pleasure out of it. Okay, so cocaine is one of the drug. Okay, so also another action is that it delays the fatigue meaning tiredness. Okay, so the tiredness is delayed. That is, the person's endurance or the physical activities may be promoted, or it tiredness is not produced after the physical activities. Okay, so this could be another abuse of this particular drug. Okay, so because of its psychological dependence, it has a less of physical dependence. There are less chances of person becoming physically dependent on this particular agent. Okay, but psychological dependence, it is very much strong because of the sense of well-being, alterations in the mood and behavior. Okay, so that's how it is having very high abuse liability. Now, one important property with this use of this drug, okay, why it is producing more of abuse liability, is that it is unique among the drugs which are consumed, in that over here tolerance does not develop upon the repeated use. Now generally we have seen that the drug actions may be altered, okay, by development of tolerance. That is, once a drug is used repeatedly over a period of time, there may be development of tolerance to that drug. That means what will happen over a period of time? Initially the drug will produce the action, no doubt, at a particular dose when it is administered, say 100 milligrams per kg if the dose is. Okay, so it will produce the appropriate action. But over a period of time when the drug is repeatedly used, okay, so after a chronic use, the person may start developing tolerance towards that drug. That is, the drug may not show effectiveness at that particular dose, but higher dose may be required to produce the same amount of action. That is the development of tolerance. Okay, so that the efficacy of the drug may be slowed down, okay, or it may be reduced, okay, slowly. So that is tolerance. But with cocaine, tolerance is not developed even if the drug is consumed repeatedly. But over here, sometimes reverse tolerance is seen. Now, reverse tolerance meaning requirement of higher dose to produce the same action. So, reverse tolerance will be requirement of a lower dose to produce the same action. So, that's what is seen. So, behavioral effects or the euphoria or the sense of well-being which is produced. So, that will be experienced at a lower dose. Okay, so this particular phenomenon is known as reverse tolerance. So, this kind of reverse tolerance is also seen with the repeated use of cocaine. Okay, apart from that, it is also showing stimulant action on the vagal center. So, because of the stimulation of vagal center, as you are already aware that it results in the bradycardia, that is decrease in the heart rate. Also, vasomotor center is stimulated, which is mainly involved in regulation of the BP. So, rise in BP will be produced. Apart from that, vomiting center is also stimulated. So, nausea and vomiting will be precipitated. Then temperature regulating center also can be stimulated, because of which pyrexia, that is increase in the body temperature, will be seen. Then coming to its action in the periphery. In the periphery, okay, so far we were talking about the CNS. Okay, so if you consider the actions in the periphery, it blocks the uptake of NA, that is noradrenaline, and ADR, that is adrenaline. Okay, so these are the adrenergic neurotransmitters which are released at the adrenergic neuron terminal. Okay, so NA here, NA is given as an example. So NA, which is found in the adrenergic neuron, it is stored in the form of vesicles. So as and when this neuron is stimulated, this stored NA or adrenaline, it will be released. It is acting as a neurotransmitter at the adrenergic system. So it will be released into the cleft, and wherever there are effector organs will contain the adrenergic receptors. So your noradrenaline or adrenaline, it will go and act on these adrenergic receptors. This is what is a normal physiology of the adrenergic neurotransmitters. Okay, so now what this drug cocaine is doing is, it is blocking the uptake of noradrenaline and adrenaline into the adrenergic nerve endings. Okay, so now normally when noradrenaline or adrenaline is released, okay, so once it is released, it will act onto its receptors. So once its action is over, its action is terminated. If you can remember your ANS chapter, we had discussed this over there. Okay, so once the action is over, the action of noradrenaline or adrenaline, it is terminated either by metabolism, by COMT or MAO enzyme. These are involved in the metabolism of noradrenaline and adrenaline, or the action can also be terminated by reuptake. There are special transporters which are located onto the axon wall, okay, the plasma membrane of your axon. There are specific transporters, norepinephrine transporter this is. Okay, so these transporters, what they will do, whatever noradrenaline is released in the cleft, okay, once it has produced its action, okay, whatever noradrenaline is there in the cleft, it will be taken back inside the axon terminal, and it will be again taken back by the vesicles, and it will be stored within the vesicles for future use. Okay, so this is one of the step for termination of the action of noradrenaline. So it is removed from the cleft by the process of reuptake. Okay, one is the axonal reuptake, and the second one is the vesicular reuptake. Okay, vesicular monoamine transporter this is. So it will take it back inside the vesicles, it will be stored for future use. So now this reuptake of your noradrenaline and adrenaline back inside the adrenergic nerve terminals or adrenergic nerve endings, it is inhibited or it is blocked by the cocaine. Okay, here you can see cocaine is inhibiting this transporter so that it is not taken up back by the adrenergic neuron. So what will happen to this noradrenaline or adrenaline? It will remain over here in the cleft for a longer period of time. So it will remain around your receptors. So here if the receptors for your noradrenaline or adrenaline are located, so it will remain in the vicinity of the receptors for a longer period of time. So it will act onto its receptor for a longer period of time. Okay, so ultimately what is the action of cocaine? By inhibiting the reuptake of noradrenaline and adrenaline back inside the neurons, what it is doing, it is increasing its concentration in the cleft in the vicinity of its receptor, so that this will act on its receptor for a longer period of time. So that itself when cocaine is given, similar effects are also produced, sympathomimetic effects are produced. Okay, sympathomimetic effects meaning actions similar to that which is produced after stimulating the sympathetic system. So sympathomimetic effects will be seen. Okay, another consequence is that it can potentiate the action of directly acting sympathomimetics. Now what are directly acting sympathomimetics? Those drugs which can directly act on the receptors. They will go and bind to the receptor, stimulate the receptor. So by promoting the action of noradrenaline or adrenaline, it is potentiating the action of directly acting sympathomimetic. So both are producing similar type of action. So potentiation of the, that is enhancement of the action of the directly acting sympathomimetic drugs will take place. On the other hand, it is suppressing the actions of indirectly acting sympathomimetics. Now how these indirectly acting sympathomimetic drugs act? They act indirectly. Yes, they act by promoting the release of adrenaline and noradrenaline. They themselves will not act on the receptor. Okay, what they will do is, indirectly acting sympathomimetics, they will produce the release of noradrenaline and adrenaline in the cleft. So that's how they are promoting the action of noradrenaline. This noradrenaline which is released, it will in turn go and bind to the receptor and produce sympathomimetic action. So directly these drugs are not able to stimulate the receptor, but how they will act? They will act by promoting the release of the neurotransmitter, that is noradrenaline and adrenaline, which in turn will go and bind to the receptors. So now what cocaine is doing? It is depleting this amount because reuptake is inhibited. Okay, it is allowing noradrenaline to stay over here for a longer period of time. So reuptake is inhibited. So because of this, the stores of noradrenaline may get depleted. So how the indirectly acting sympathomimetics will act? Because the stores have been depleted, it has been reduced. So there won't be sufficient amount of noradrenaline which can be released when these drugs are administered. So the store is depleted so that release of noradrenaline will not take place. That's how the action of indirectly acting sympathomimetics is suppressed by cocaine, because of the depletion of the stores, because more amount of your neurotransmitter is remaining in the cleft. It is not taken up back into the cleft. Okay, so now what are the sympathomimetic actions which are produced? So these include local vasoconstrictor action, that is wherever it is injected over there or wherever it is applied, it will show vasoconstrictor action. Okay, because it is potentiating the action of noradrenaline and adrenaline, as we have already seen that these are pressure agents. They produce vasoconstriction. So it will result in vasoconstriction in the local areas. Also tachycardia, that is rise in heart rate may be seen, or rise in BP may be seen, and mydriasis also may be produced because of the alpha action. Now coming to the uses, the only use of cocaine is as ocular anesthetic. That is, it was introduced and it is used only as an ocular anesthetic, because we have seen that it has lot of deleterious effect. Okay, CNS effects may be produced. So as far as possible, it is restricted as a surface anesthetic. It is not injected. We have seen the reasons why it is not supposed to be injected. So topical application in the eye is the restricted use, but over here also it has some deleterious effect. That is, conjunctival vessels may get, blood vessels may get constricted over here, so that inconvenience in the eye or pain in the eye may be produced. Clouding may be seen, that is vision may become cloudy. Then slowing of the cornea, that is slowing meaning shedding of the cornea. The cornea may get damaged because of drying and local tissue toxicity. So use over here also is not warranted. That means it is not used popularly as a ocular anesthetic. It has almost gone out of use because of most of the deleterious effect which it is producing. Coming to the next drug, that is Procaine. This is the first of a synthetic local anesthetic which was introduced in 1905. However, since lidocaine was introduced, okay, this drug's popularity has gone down. It is practically not used now because lidocaine has many more advantages. Okay, so that's why lidocaine is preferred over Procaine. Okay, it is not a surface anesthetic used in the form of injectable form. Okay, and one more, sustained release preparation of this penicillin may be produced. Okay, so it forms a poorly soluble salt with benzyl penicillin. Okay, so it is known as Procaine penicillin. So when this Procaine penicillin, when this particular compound, it is injected by IM route, it acts for 24 hours. So it makes the duration of action of this penicillin act for a longer period of time. So also it is slowly absorbed from the site of injection. So it will remain over there for a longer period of time. Coming to the next drug, that is lidocaine. It is also known as lignocaine. So this drug, when it was introduced in 1948, okay, this is right now most popularly used local anesthetic. Okay, and this, if you can remember the classification, it is used both as a surface anesthetic as well as a injectable type of local anesthetic. So both the ways administration is possible with this particular agent. So also it acts very quickly. That is, the nerve block, okay, that is the conduction of the nerve can be blocked within 3 minutes after injection around a particular nerve. Whereas if you can see Procaine, it takes around about 15 minutes for it to start its action. That is, blockage of the conduction takes 15 minutes, whereas in case of lidocaine, it can block the nerve conduction within 3 minutes. So also the anesthesia which is produced, that is also more intense kind of anesthesia which is produced, and also the action lasts for a longer period of time. So it's a long acting anesthetic. Okay. Now there is one disadvantage with the injectable type of local anesthetic. When lidocaine is injected, it results in vasodilatation. In that particular area where it is injected, it results in vasodilatation. Now why it is disadvantageous? Vasodilatation meaning blood flow to that area will increase. So now blood flow to that area, if it increases, what will happen? Your drug may get absorbed into that blood vessel. Okay, so if there is capillary dilatation, their permeability also increases. So there are more chances of the drug entering into your systemic circulation. Okay, so that's a disadvantage of lidocaine. It produces local vasodilatation in the area where it is injected. Okay, now coming to the techniques by which it is used. Of course, we will see all these techniques in detail in the next part of the chapter. Okay, so it is used by surface application. Infiltration technique also can be used. Nerve block, epidural anesthesia, spinal anesthesia, and IV regional block anesthesia. So all these are the techniques. So if you can see that there are many techniques by which this drug can be administered. Now if you can see the actions, okay, central actions of lidocaine at therapeutic doses are quite mild. Okay, so light drowsiness may be seen. Okay, so mental depression or CNS depression may be seen, slight depression may be seen, mental clouding, that is the thinking may be affected, then taste may get altered, and tinnitus, that is a ringing sound in the ear, may be heard. Okay, so these are the only effects which are seen at therapeutic doses. Okay, so if you can compare with the cocaine has quite many disadvantages, so quite many adverse effects at the therapeutic dose itself. Comparatively, this is safer. However, at overdose, supposing if accidentally if the drug enters into the systemic circulation, overdose may result in muscle twitching, that is alternate contractions and relaxations in the muscles may take place, convulsions may be precipitated in the susceptible individuals, then cardiac arrhythmias may be precipitated, fall in BP may be seen, the person may even pass into coma sometimes, or respiratory arrest may also take place. Okay. If you can see, lidocaine, apart from being used as a local anesthetic, it is also used as an antiarrhythmic drug. Then coming to the next drug, that is prelocaine. So this particular drug also has similar property to that of lidocaine. One important difference is that it does not produce vasodilatation at the site of infiltration where it is injected. We have seen with lidocaine that it produces vasodilatation in that area, local vasodilatation. So this disadvantage is not seen with prelocaine. So also lower tendency to produce the CNS toxicity because the volume of distribution is larger. Okay, larger volume of distribution meaning it is found mainly in the tissues. Okay, less of it is found into the systemic circulation. So it won't enter into the CNS, so less of CNS toxicity is seen with this particular agent. However, the drawback is with the metabolite which is generated. One of the metabolite which is produced after the metabolism of this drug, it has a tendency to produce methemoglobinemia. Now, in this particular condition, the levels of methemoglobin is increased in the blood. So because of this, the oxygen which is supplied to the tissues, the amount of oxygen which is reaching the tissues is reduced. The oxygen carrying capacity of your blood is reduced over here in this condition. So that's a drawback of prelocaine. This is a major adverse effects which can be produced. Okay, if you can see the techniques by which it can be administered, these include infiltration, then nerve block, and IV regional anesthesia can also be given with this. The next compound is eutectic lidocaine prelocaine. Now this particular preparation, if you can see that there are two drugs involved over here, lidocaine and prelocaine. Okay, so it's a eutectic mixture of two local anesthetics. Now the advantage of this particular mixture is that it can anesthetize the intact skin after surface application. We have already seen under pharmacokinetics that a local anesthetic cannot anesthetize an intact skin. It can anesthetize a mucous membrane, okay, or it can anesthetize the abraded skin, that is a damaged skin. But local anesthetics generally cannot penetrate into the intact skin, so that they are not able to anesthetize the intact skin very effectively. But the advantage with this mixture is that it can anesthetize the intact skin also. Now what do you mean by an eutectic mixture? Eutectic mixture, you are already aware of that when two particular solids are mixed in a particular proportion at a particular temperature, both of them will reduce each other's melting point. So their melting point is reduced. Individually it may be high, but when these two compounds are mixed together at a particular temperature, their melting point is lowered down. And exactly that's what is happening when lidocaine and prelocaine are mixed in equal proportion. In same amounts, if both these compounds are mixed together at 25 degrees Celsius, they will start liquefying. So whatever oil which is obtained after liquefaction, this oil is emulsified into water. So a water and oil type of cream is produced. Okay, so it is formulated in the form of an oil in water type of cream, okay, emulsion, that is in the form of a cream. This cream is applied onto the area which is supposed to be anesthetized, or where the procedures like IV cannulation or maybe skin grafting, okay, for say some surgeries or plastic surgeries, you may have to graft a skin from other area of the body. So you need to remove the skin from the area. So you need to anesthetize that intact skin over here, or other superficial procedures. So in case of such procedures, just 1 hour before carrying out these procedures, you have to apply this cream which is formulated and apply the occlusive dressing over it. So occlusive dressing, as you are already aware, it will increase the hydration of the skin and it will promote the entry of the substance which is applied onto the skin. It will help in penetration of the drug which is applied on the skin inside the or towards the interior layers of your skin. So it promotes the entry inside the skin. So deeper layers of your skin may get anesthetized. So if you can see that round about a depth of 5 mm may get anesthetized. 5 mm of skin, a depth of 5 mm of skin may get anesthetized with this particular mixture, eutectic mixture, okay, for round about 1 to 2 hours after the removal. The skin will remain anesthetized. So it is used for minor procedures, okay, like cannulation, which is painful at times. So cannulation can be done or skin grafting can be done. Such minor procedures can be performed over here, which requires to anesthetize the intact skin. Okay. Apart from that, this mixture is also used as an alternative towards lidocaine infiltration. So alternatively, this eutectic mixture can also be used for this purpose, infiltration purpose. Then coming to the next drug, that is tetracaine. It is also known as amitocaine. This is a highly lipid soluble PABA ester which is more potent and more toxic. Now why it is more toxic is because it is slowly hydrolyzed by the plasma pseudocholinesterase. Supposing if it enters into the systemic circulation, then its degradation by the plasma pseudocholinesterase, it takes place slowly. That is, hydrolysis process takes place very slowly, so it remains in the body for a longer period of time and it may start precipitating the toxic effects. Okay. Now if you can see the uses or the techniques by which it can be applied, it is used both as a surface anesthetic as well as for the conduction block. Okay. So since it is toxic, it is more toxic, we have seen over here, its metabolism is also slow to occur. So that's why preferably this drug is used for topical application. So use is restricted towards topical application to the areas like eye, nose, throat, tracheobronchial tree, and rarely it is used for spinal and caudal anesthesia where injections are supposed to be given. Okay, so it is mostly preferred for local application. No doubt it can be used by both the ways. It is an injectable type of anesthetic also. It can be used for these purposes, spinal anesthesia also of longer duration, but as far as possible local use is preferred with this drug because of the toxicity. So it can precipitate the systemic toxicity. If you can see even after tracheobronchial spray, when it is applied as a tracheobronchial spray, though the absorption from this areas may take slowly or it acts slowly, but still when it is applied in the form of a spray, it can be absorbed into the systemic circulation, so that very high blood concentrations may be approached. Okay, same like after which are obtained by systemic administration or IV administration of this tetracaine. Similar type of plasma concentrations may be attained. So that's why use is restricted only topically. Okay, say for example eye, nose, throat and all. Okay, where there are less chances of systemic absorption. Then coming to the next drug, that is bupivacaine. Now this is again a potent and long acting amide linked local anesthetic. The techniques by which it can be administered is infiltration, nerve block, epidural and spinal anesthesia, specifically those which are requiring a long duration of action. Okay, so for such purposes it is used because it's a long acting agent. Now if you can see this particular concentration of 0.25 to 0.5% of this solution, when it is injected epidurally, it produces adequate analgesia without significant motor blockage. That means analgesia, meaning sensory pain perception is effectively lost, but without affecting the motor functions. Okay, so the sensory perception of pain is abolished. It is producing analgesia, that is pain is abolished, but the motor functions are maintained. Okay, so it is having or it is showing a differential action on the sensory nerves and the motor nerves. So because of this differential action on the sensory and the motor neurons, it has gained popularity in the obstetrics during the childbirth, okay, vaginal deliveries. Okay, so what it will do when this drug is used, it will abolish the pain, because labor pains are quite unbearable. Okay, so they are quite severe pain. So this drug can be used to relieve the mother from the labor pain, wherein the childbirth may not be affected. Okay, so it can be cooperated. So motor functions are not affected over here. Only thing is the pain sensation. It will help in reducing the painful sensation during the childbirth. Apart from this, it can be also used to relieve the post-operative pain. That is, after say a surgery has carried out, unless and until the anesthetic effect is there, the pain will be abolished. But once the anesthetic effect is gone, then the person will start feeling the pain. So to relieve the person from that post-operative pain, that is followed by the operations, the pain which is produced or which is felt by the person can be relieved of this post-operative pain by continuous epidural infusion of this drug. Okay, so for both the purposes it is used in obstetrics as well as in case of post-operative pain, to relieve the post-operative pain. Then if you can see the properties, kinetic properties, it is highly lipid soluble and it distributes more in the tissues than in the blood. So once it is injected, once it is used for spinal anesthesia or epidural anesthesia, okay, where it is injected in the spinal cord. So when it is used by this technique, more of the drug is distributed in the tissues and less of it is remaining in the blood. So when it is used during the obstetric procedures, less of it reaches the fetus actually. So it will remain restricted to the tissues of the mother. It is less of it is going into the blood circulation of the mother, so that the fetus will not receive much of the drug. So because of this, because of less exposure of this drug to the fetus, there are less chances of neonatal depression. It is having deleterious effect on the cardiovascular system, also on the respiratory system. So less of depression, such a depression or less of such deleterious effects are seen in the fetus. However, if you can see, the major drawback with this bupivacaine is it can prolong the QT interval. Okay, that means it has a tendency to precipitate the cardiac arrhythmias. Ventricular tachycardias may be precipitated. It's a type of arrhythmia which can be precipitated, or at times it can result in cardiac depression also. Okay, so for this reason, that is, it can precipitate arrhythmias and it can produce cardiac depressions. For this reason, it should not be used by IV regional anesthesia. Okay, so for this purpose, this bupivacaine is not preferred, because in this technique, the drug is actually injected intravascularly. Okay, that is, intravenously it is injected. So it can precipitate arrhythmias or it can depress the cardiac function. So that's why it is not used by this particular technique, because it can be life threatening at times. So also when bupivacaine is used in the concentration of 0.75% during the labor, okay, or during the childbirth, it has resulted in fatalities also. Okay, that's are on record due to cardiac arrest. So that's why, as far as possible, use it should not be preferred, okay, during the childbirth. More safer agents are supposed to be preferred. Now if you can see over here, the S enantiomer of this bupivacaine, that is levobupivacaine. Now this is equally potent, but it is less cardiotoxic and less prone to produce the seizures, okay, as compared to bupivacaine. So this drug enantiomer, the levobupivacaine, can be preferred instead of bupivacaine. Now coming to the next drug, that is ropivacaine. Now this is a newer congener of bupivacaine, and this particular agent is less cardiotoxic. So since this drug was discovered, it is preferred over the use of bupivacaine. Bupivacaine was popularly used specifically in the obstetrics But since ropivacaine was introduced, ropivacaine has replaced bupivacaine. The reason is it is less cardiotoxic. And if you can see that the blockage of the sensory neurons, if you can see, and the motor neurons, it can block the A delta and the C fibers more completely as compared to A beta fibers. Now these A delta and C fibers, these are involved in transmission of the pain sensation. Okay, so these are the sensory fibers, whereas A beta fibers are the motor functions. Okay, are responsible for the motor function. So this drug can effectively block the pain sensation more as compared to the motor function. So motor functions are maintained, whereas the pain sensation is abolished selectively, or more selectively rather. Okay, so if you can compare this drug with the bupivacaine, okay, equi-effective concentrations of this drug are higher than that of bupivacaine. That means the dose which is required to produce the same action as that of bupivacaine are little bit higher. That is, it is less potent as compared to bupivacaine. No doubt it is less potent, more dose or the more amount of drug will be required, but the main advantage is that it has a greater degree of separation between the sensory and the motor block. That is, when you compare this drug with bupivacaine, ropivacaine can more effectively block the sensory neurons as compared to the motor neurons. Okay, so that's how it has gained popularity in the obstetrics. So pain is abolished very effectively, whereas the motor functions can be coordinated during the childbirth. Okay, then apart from this, it is also used to relieve the post-operative pain also. Okay, no doubt continuous administration, epidural administration is used to relieve the labor pain, and also it is used to relieve the post-operative pain also. It can also be employed in case of nerve block technique also. That is one of another technique for administration of this drug. Coming to the next drug, that is dibucaine or cincocaine, it is also known as. This is the most potent, most toxic and longest acting local anesthetic. So it is used only as a surface anesthetic, and that too on less delicate mucous membrane, like in the anal canal, okay, in the rectal areas. It is preferred to be used, not in the other mucous membrane like mucosa of your eye or buccal mucosa. It is not supposed to be used because it is quite toxic. Okay, with the use of or with the discovery of bupivacaine, the use of this dibucaine has gone down because it is quite toxic. When you compare bupivacaine with dibucaine, bupivacaine is quite safer, and more better drug than bupivacaine is ropivacaine, which is discovered afterwards, which is a congener of bupivacaine. Coming to the next drug, that is benoxenate. This is a very good surface anesthetic to be applied to the eye because it is producing less of irritant effect on the eye. So if you can use this drug in a concentration of 0.4% of the solution, it can effectively produce corneal anesthesia, which is sufficient for the diagnostic procedure known as tonometry. Tonometry is a procedure used to measure the intraocular pressure. Intraocular pressure may rise in the conditions like glaucoma. So this drug is used to anesthetize the eye, wherein you need to diagnose conditions like glaucoma, where intraocular pressure or intraocular tension is measured in this type of procedures. Okay, so it produces less of mydriasis and corneal damage. So it is quite safe to be used for this particular procedure. It can anesthetize the eye very effectively for the diagnostic procedures. Coming to the next drug, two drugs are discussed over here, benzocaine and butyl amino benzoate. Another name for this drug is butamate. Now these two agents have very low aqueous solubility. Now because of their very low aqueous solubility, their absorption from the mucous membrane or abraded skin is very less. Okay, or rather it is insignificant. They are almost not absorbed from the either mucous membrane or from the abraded skin. Okay, so they are not removed into the or they are not entering into the systemic circulation. So they will remain in that area where it is applied for a longer period of time with producing very less of systemic toxicity, or rather without producing any systemic toxicity. Now this less of systemic toxicity is because of its less of absorption into the systemic circulation, and that's because of less of its aqueous solubility. Okay, so this preparation becomes a longer acting one. Now coming to the uses of these agents, they are used in the form of lozenges for the treatment of stomatitis, that is inflammation in the mouth or the tongue, okay, so or the lips. Okay, so in the mouth region, if there is some kind of inflammation which has taken place, so it can be relieved by giving this drug in the form of lozenges for local application. Then for sore throat treatment also, apart from that, in the form of dusting powders or ointments, it can be applied on wounds or to the ulcerated lesions also. It will help by relieving the pain, it will anesthetize that area. However, the drawback of these two examples are that they are PABA derivatives. So since they are PABA derivatives, they can antagonize the action of sulfonamide. Sulfonamide, you all must have studied under the chemotherapy. It acts by inhibiting this enzyme dihydrofolate synthase. Okay, so which is responsible for conversion of PABA, that is para-aminobenzoic acid, into dihydrofolic acid. So this step is inhibited by sulfonamide. So since these are PABA derivatives, the effectiveness of sulfonamides will be reduced because they are PABA derivatives. They will increase the amount of PABA in the body. Okay, so that's how it will abolish the actions of sulfonamides. The next drug is oxetazine. This is again a potent topical anesthetic which is having some unique properties. That is, it remains in the ionized state in a very small amount. Okay, when even in case of lower pH. Okay, that is, even if the pH is low, less of it will remain in the ionized form. And we have already seen that this local anesthetic has to be more in the unionized form, because the local anesthetic receptor is located interiorly. Okay, it has to cross the exolemma, reach inside the exoplasm, and from the inside of the neuron it has to act on the local anesthetic receptor. Okay, so the problem with certain local anesthetics is that at acidic pH, that is at lower pH, more of the drug remains in the ionized form. So less of it will be available to cross the membrane and reach its receptor. But that is not the case with this example, oxetazine. This is unique in that less of it will remain in the ionized form. Okay, so ionization is less even if the pH is low. So these are more effective in anesthetizing the gastric mucosa. Over here, gastric mucosa, meaning in your gastric region, that is in the stomach region, we are already aware that the pH is acidic in nature, that is, it is lower. So generally local anesthetic will start ionizing at this particular pH. But oxetazine, it remains more of it in the unionized form, so that it will help in relieving the pain or the inflammation in this area. So when it is given along with the anesthetic, they will, the antacids, when they are combined with the antacids, or when they are given along with the antacids, they can effectively control the symptoms of gastritis, that is inflammation of the gastric mucosa, or drug-induced gastric irritation can be relieved, or gastroesophageal reflux can also be relieved, or heartburn of the pregnancy. So it will show the symptomatic relief in all these conditions. Okay, so it is effective even at acidic pH also. Whereas if doses exceeds a particular amount, that is 100 milligrams per day, it may produce adverse effects like dizziness and drowsiness.